in gusts and gales. We catch the lift of currents and ride their falls. We are living in a time when the world is changing, when hope is fading, when disillusionment is rising. We're living in a time when the world is warming, shrinking, and seething. And in another time, I'm listening to a scratchy record that I borrow from the library. A record. It's a small pizza-sized vinyl disc, and I'm playing it on a portable player with a hinged cover that has a switch to move from 33 to 78 RPMs. It's a relic from my parents' college days. A few years after this, I listened to reggae and early punk rock on cassette tapes. Cassette tapes. They have these long brown streamers which come out when you accidentally snag them on something. And then there's talking heads, they're on CDs. CDs are still actual objects which you carry around and play on bulky devices you can't really comfortably carry in your pocket. Yes, change is coming. We create church together in a time when people hide their fears about the world in an excess of consumption, bury them under mountains of concerns about their needs and their rights. We are making church in a time when all the ideas of the world are just a keystroke away, and still it seems that we do not have the solutions we most desperately need. We live in a time when more and more people live in their heads and lose the knowledge of their bodies. Now, a couple months ago, I stood here and I told you how proud I was of a panel of youth from this congregation who went and testified to the power of their faith at an anti-bullying conference that was sponsored by the Rainbow Community Center. What I didn't tell you was that they were particularly impressive because they put their heart and their intellect into presentations delivered to a group smaller in number than their panel. The majority of people at that conference, and especially the BGLTQ youth, could not imagine that there was anything that religion would offer that was worth entering into that room. The winds of change are blowing, and yet people still face the mystery of life and the unknowable realities of death. They still yearn for community and they grapple with loss, and we are all still held in the great truths of the world, that somehow all is mystery, and that even in an era of unbounded information, awe is not beyond our reach. We make church amid the winds of change, and in the times when the very sands and soil seem to be shifting under our feet, we come together in times of change and send out the seeds of our religious inheritance, knowing they may fly to places where they have never been before, or that they may just fall on barren soil and wither away. We ask ourselves, how do we make sense of our lives, of the pain and the beauty both? How do we know beyond what we already know? How do we hold so many small truths, the ones that give life meaning? How do we touch that which is greater than the everyday concerns of our lives? How do we help hold one another steady in a world where change might be the only constant? How do we ensure that we have others that we trust to walk with us through these days in true community? Facing change takes courage. Facing change takes hope, and we need community that can offer both. Take me to church. My last conversations with our beloved Beverly Scaff, who died at the end of last year, sent me back to her book, the one that Daniel Zwickel is trying to scan in so we can have more access to it. But back to reading about the early days of this congregation, and in that reading, knowing the truth in that old saying that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Because it took hope for the Johnsons to open their home in 1955 to provide a place to be outspoken when McCarthyism was just around the background. It took hope and courage to provide a place to persevere and organize around texts not from scriptures but taken just from life. It took courage to realize that that place and the Red Cross building and other coupled venues that came in between were not large enough or spacious enough to allow the kind of experiences people needed to build this community, to offer children real religious education. It took courage to support a minister who stood up for the rights of Black people during a controversial civil rights movement which every member did not agree with, to defend integrated housing in what was becoming a white flight community. And maybe that is where the radical love of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. comes in, worshiping this Martin Luther King Day weekend in a time of mass incarceration of brown and black-skinned people, worshiping in a time of inequality of opportunity when have and have-nots can barely hear each other's perspective, teaching religious values in a time when our children and our grandchildren know more about intruder drills than potlucks, building community in a time when we need to learn to inhabit our lives rather than our devices. Looking for knowledge, curating knowledge in a time when we don't know the exact recipe for change, and yet we hunger for its preparation. Change takes resilience. Change takes commitment. Take me to church. And here is what we know here that so many do not: that a church can profess love and unity and affirm a diversity of people. In an interview with New York Magazine, the artist Hosier, whose video we just saw, the video that breaks my heart and brings tears to my eyes no matter how many times I see it, he explained why he made this particular video. This is what he says: "Sexuality and sexual orientation is just natural. An act of love is one of the most human things. But an organization like the church, through its doctrine, would undermine humanity by successfully teaching shame about sex, that it is sinful or that it offends God. This song is about asserting yourself and reclaiming your humanity through an act of love." This song, which hit #1 in countries from the US to the Czech Republic to Greece to Iceland to Lebanon, uses the atheist author Christopher Hitchens' summation, his reduction of what church is about. This is what he says: "I was born sick, command me to be well." We create church in a different way, in a time when we need to make clear to others who do not understand who we are or who other liberal Christians are, that when 1 in 5 of our citizens will mark the box none when asked about religious affiliation, there is an alternative to that kind of disillusionment. Many, many still carry the scars of deep hurt, and this is a time when we see religion as only a crutch. We see religious ideas, as Krista Tippett, the host of the NPR show Speaking of Faith, says, we see religious ideas as soft, while other kinds of subjective analysis, like political analysis, is hard analysis. Religion, Tippett says, is about how much you pray, what you do, how you live. It's about a lot more than doctrine and what you believe. Faith's territory, she says, is the drama of human life, where art is more precise than science, where ideas are lived and breathed. So yes, take me to church, a church like this one, with change and resilience in its very DNA, in its energy, that can embrace technology as it once embraced the Friday night open house or movies under the stars, which I think is a really good idea. We should try again. And a community resource center called the Peace Center, the Mount Diablo Peace and Justice Center, and a garden devoted to remembering the beloved dead, and an open space easement that allowed a path up to the green space, and a gleaning orchard. A church where we can be on the streets as an act of worship, as some of us will do tomorrow, joining the Oakland March for Reclaiming MLK's Legacy, which you can learn about today at the social justice table. A church who will put those prayers of the feet in action to point out the human rights violations of today. We do church together amid the winds of change, and they are ever blowing. Will we move into new truths and new ways of feeling and knowing? Will we bend? Will we break? Will we let go of what holds us rigid? Will we nurture that precious inheritance, the seeds which have said and stood by in so many ages to say that all are saved, that all have worth, and that there is a unity which connects all life? So maybe what we believe is the message, and the form will change the way that my record became a cassette, became a CD, and now a digital morsel I keep on my phone. A colleague says that just as the printing press changed religion, technology will reshape it again. But technology is just a means. The legacy of love and hope, of courage and resilience is the precious inheritance, the end. We bend and dance and float on the winds of change. We know anew the resilience which gives us the strength that we have and bends yesterday's hope into today's promise. And still, people are here trying to find meaning in their lives and wanting their children to have values which will filter out the wheat from the chaff. And people still want to know, what does a good life look like? And we still need leaders who can model openness and strength. And people still need hope. People still need hope and love and unity, the great legacies of our faith tradition. So take me to church, this church, the church we make together.